to Murder and Everything Else. My name is Joy.
And my name is Cheryl, and Joy and I are two old friends who are going to be talking about murder and everything else. So, Joy, my friend, how do I end each episode? What advice do I give that might very
You
insightful?
say,
Uh-huh.
and remember, don't wipe from back to front.
Okay,
No, you
always the
say, don't
jokester.
complicate your day.
Well, I didn't listen to my own advice.
Oh,
And the other
no.
day, well, now I didn't, it could have been worse, but these are the moments where my sister, her voice is there saying, "Don't complicate your day, Cheryl." And I was like, I got to do it today. So I'm driving to work and it's a 45 mile an hour zone. It's a residential area. It's 45 miles an hour, which to some
In your
people
new
means
car,
my new car, which to some people means 60 miles an hour, 60, not one
to
six.
me, to
Six.
me.
Oh, do you drive like that, Joy? Please, I'm going to be so disappointed if you do.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
I do.
Oh my God. Well, I'm driving and I'm going about 47. 48 is about my comfort zone. Now, I will say if people are going 50, 51, 52, I sometimes keep up with their pace because I'm like, hell, the cops got, like five people in front of me they can pull over. Anyway, there's no one in front of me. So I'm just going like 47, 48. And this older guy, which is so funny because I'm old and I'm saying older, but he looked much older than me. He got this big ass truck. I mean, super high. Probably had like those four tires in the back. You know how they have the two in the front and four in the back? I don't know. It was
Called
like,
dualies.
what do you
You
call
know,
those? What is it
they're
called?
called dualies. Dualies.
Dualies. Okay,
Yeah.
well, what do they call those? The racing. I mean, not racing, where the trucks go over each other, and there's a name for that.
Monster truck rally.
Monster truck. He had a fucking monster truck, or at least it should have been. Okay. So he's in the back of me and he comes up and tailgates. Okay. We are on the streets in the neighborhood. We are not on the freeway. It's not about being in the quote unquote fast lane because I've got to make a left turn coming up. So I have to be in the left lane. Plus, the rules about the left lane being the fast lane don't apply. It only applies to the freeway, in my opinion.
Right.
He comes up on me and I love, and when I say love, I mean I hate when people do this. Not only do they ride your ass, and his truck is like twice as high as mine, he has to lean over, move his truck over so both he and his truck are looking around, like to make it a point, like, who the fuck's in front of you? There's no one in front of you. Why aren't you going faster? I hate when they do that. Do you know what I'm saying? They do the peekaboo around, like,
Yeah.
why are you going so slow? And ooh, the rage in me could not be contained. And my sister's words of advice:
Ran
"Do
out the
not
window.
complicate my day." I could not help it. And I let my foot off the gas. I didn't brake check him. I just slowly let my foot off the gas and it went down from 70, 47, 46, 45, 44. And then he went around the side because the right lane was completely open, which people who drive like that just go around. Just go around.
No,
What does
people who drive like that just fuck off. Like I can't. It's like what kind of aggressive issues? Like I don't know. It reminds me of Thelma and Louise. Like literally, like those weird ass truckers, and I don't know.
Oh, yeah, yeah,
Like
yeah. Well, and here's my question. What do you want me to, what is that posturing? What does that mean? It's like Thelma and Louise. They go, "Went that business
I
with your
know
tongue."
it's
What does that
so
mean? I have a
it's so
stupid ass.
annoying.
So I'm like, what do you want me to speed up? Not going to do it. You want me to move over as if this is a freeway? Not going to do it because my left-hand turn lane is coming up above. Also, I can see where going below the speed limit is irritating to some people, but I was going 2 to 3 miles over the speed limit. And he finally zooms around and I'm like, yeah, motherfucker, yeah, just go the fuck around. What is your fucking point? So then, with all his impatience, he gets up to the light. And then he gets stopped at the light, and here I come moseying on. He went around me, got back in the left lane, and now I'm going into the left turn lane. And again, I'm not listening to my sister's words of advice, and I slowly drive by him, and I don't stop, but I do a slow drive by just to give him the stink eye. And this dude rolled his window down and spit at me.
Whoa.
Whoa, thank goodness it was saliva and not a bullet. So I was like, yeah, Cheryl, you're really lucky he didn't pull a gun.
Cheryl,
and then
you made this really, really dramatic.
Well, but still, that was nasty. I looked over and he rolled his window and then he sucked it in to hock a loogie at me. I checked and there was nothing on my car. And if there's any karma, it would have flown back in his face. But what I'm saying is it could have been worse, and I lost my temper, and I couldn't help it because I hate, it's one of my pet peeves when people not only tailgate, but they do that thing where they move their car over. Like, let me see, I'm making a point, there's no one in front of you, blah, blah, blah. Hate that. Anyway, I did complicate my day. Luckily, I didn't get shot.
I'm glad you didn't get shot.
Me too.
And on that note, with that exciting story that you just told us, I need to issue a disclaimer that this show is not for kids. And also, kids, just remember that road rage is really, really dangerous and bad. And also another disclaimer that this episode is probably going to run a wee bit long. And if it does, we may decide to split it into 2 episodes. There's a lot of ground to cover in this one. And so in order to do the topic justice and to honor the story that we're about to talk about, we want to cover it thoroughly. So just remember that if you get into this one, it's good, but it may turn into a long episode or a double episode. Okay?
Two-parter.
So there. I also have a retraction today, and that is in the episode that aired on Sunday, which was What Are You Watching? Mary Kay Letourneau did not have a prostate. I said she had prostate cancer. I caught the error after I was done editing, and I waited to see if anyone would notice. And guess what? My husband came in the house and chuckled and told me there is no human possible way that Mary Kay Letourneau had a prostate. So you heard it here first. If you are a female, born a female, with female genitalia, you do not have a prostate. Okay, you do have a colon. So just consider this little biology class, human biology class, a learning experience. Women if you were born a female with female sex organs, you do not have a prostate. You have a colon. All right.
Yes. So she had colon. Mary Kay Letourneau had colon cancer. But write us at murderandeverythingelse@gmail.com if you are a woman and you do have a prostate or a prostrate. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, that's right. And anyway, on that note, Cheryl, do you have any updates?
I do. I'm so excited. And the reason I'm excited is because I am, because I really have not put effort into it. Just made a little adjustment and I've lost a few more pounds. So as of yesterday, of yesterday, I lost 15 pounds since the end of August, beginning of September, just by making a little adjustment. Yeah. And I have not been starving myself.
The little adjustment is that she taped her mouth shut. Just kidding.
I've had my jaws wired shut, but other than that, I'm on a strictly liquid diet. No, for real. I have not starved myself. I made a little adjustment, and that little adjustment, I want to share the secret. Although it might not be anyone else's problem, but I used to snack a lot after dinner. Like, why? You already had dinner, and I would just like eat sugar or shit after dinner. And now I don't do that. And just that little adjustment, I've lost 15 pounds since the beginning of September, end of August.
Wow,
So
that's amazing. So guys, you heard it here that women over the age of 55 can lose 15 pounds by stopping to snack after dinner. All right.
yeah.
So just keep that in mind when you go to the doctor and you tell them, I've tried everything except stopping to snack after dinner. By the way, does snacking involve glasses of wine or cocktails? Because I feel like a lot of women would like to have dinner and then have like a glass of wine after dinner or have a glass of wine with dinner and then chase it with another glass of wine or a bottle.
No, I don't drink. No,
Oh,
it's just sweet. It's sweets. It's sweets.
okay.
Yeah.
So were
Anyway,
you snacking? You were snacking on sweets. You weren't snacking on like chips or cheesy puffs.
no, it would be sweet stuff after dinner. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like
So,
candy
yeah,
or
yeah.
cakes and cookies and ice cream.
All of the above.
So
But
guys,
I
cut out the cakes, cookies, ice cream, and candy after dinner.
no, here's the other trick, everybody. Allow yourself a little bit, or else you go cuckoo. So I will, I switched to the sugar free, which you told me about, and I'll have a couple of pieces of. See, here's the difference. Before I used to have like 5 to 10 pieces of candy.
Oh my
Anywhere
God.
from 5 to 50,
I'm
somewhere in
surprised.
there.
I'm surprised you have teeth left. Hey, I feel like our podcast is slowly morphing from a murder podcast into like a health and fitness and like what to eat
Yeah.
podcast. And just so anybody out there listening, if you need this disclaimer, this is not any kind of like diet recommendation kind of podcast. We are not
No,
like nutritionists. So don't take any of our advice when it comes to lifestyle. All right.
that's a good disclaimer. I'm just giving you little tidbits. But yeah, that's my update. What about you? You got any updates?
I do. I want to just let our listeners know that if you are a regular listener and you are not subscribed, you should go to Spotify and subscribe to our podcast. And then the other thing I want to tell you is this. If you like listening to our podcast and you enjoy the content and the jokes and the murder and everything else and the humor,
And the murder
yeah,
and the
and the
murder.
stories about Cheryl breastfeeding her dogs, then tell your friends and family about and your coworkers and the people you bump into about our podcast so that we can see it grow. Because we would love to like double or triple our subscription numbers. That would be so awesome. And what is the best way to find out about something that you don't know about? Word of mouth. Remember, if people love something, they usually tell 1 or 2 people, but if they hate something, they usually tell 10 to 20. So
Correct.
if you are listening to this and you hate it, tell 10 to 20 people about it. Anyway, roaring on to shout outs. Cheryl, you got any shout outs?
I do. And you know what, Joy? I know you don't like this dude, but I have been watching the YouTube channel called Bad Friends, and they also have it just audio, so they are on Spotify. But the show is called Bad Friends, and it's hosted by Bobby Lee and Andrew Santino. They're both comics. I know you don't like Bobby Lee. I didn't care for him either, but he has grown on me. And I got to tell you, I have not watched, well, that's not true. I watched a movie yesterday about Lizzie Borden. Okay. I was going to say I haven't watched anything dark for a while until I watched Lizzie Borden yesterday, kill her mom and dad.
Oh my God.
Do you know Lizzie Borden, right?
No, I've never met her before.
Shut up. Okay. So I have
I
to tell
don't
you
know. I
that.
don't know anything about her. Her name rings a bell, but
What? Lizzie
it
Borden
rings a
got an.
bell. It's like Laura Ingalls Wilder. Like it rings a bell, but I'd have to think about it.
You haven't heard the I was going to call it a lullaby. Listen to this. Lizzie Borden got an axe, gave her mother 40 whacks. When she saw what she had done, she gave her father 41. You don't know
Oh
about Lizzie?
God, no, I've never heard that.
Yeah, that's definitely not a lullaby. Please don't sing that to your children. Um, I'm gonna have to do an episode about that. But I have to tell you, okay, so
Ah,
my point is I've been wanting to listen to lighthearted silly stuff. So we've talked about Smartless, and those guys make me so happy. Well, I have been binge watching slash listening to Bad Friends. Bobby
huh.
Lee and Andrew Santino will have guests on, and they have sidekicks on, and it's just a bunch of guys mostly. They do have some girls on there, but they're crass and they're crude and they talk sexually like guys talk amongst each other. But I have gotten such a kick and it's lifted my spirits. It's like being in the room with them and hearing them just act like boys and talk about stuff that boys talk about. And I got to tell you, this Andrew Santino guy, he comes in with some zingers just in talking like Will Arnett does. And I just have to say shout out to them because they've really lifted my spirits the last 2 weeks and I really needed it. So yeah, I've completely been binge listening to them.
Well,
Bad Friends.
I will say that the best way to learn about a new podcast or a new show or something is from people's recommendations. So, you
Mhm.
guys, you our listeners out there, check it out and see what you think. I have a shout out, and my shout out is for Homegrown Hand Gathered. Their website is homegrownhandgathered.com. They're on YouTube and they're also on Instagram. They do shorts, but they also do like longer, videos. Um, it is Homegrown Hand Gathered's mission is to showcase low cost methods of producing food in an urban and suburban environment. So it's like urban gardening. They hope to inspire people who previously saw growing or foraging their own for food as inaccessible and that decide that they'll give it a try. And they believe that living off the land is a community effort. So their goal is not only to connect with their environment, with our environment, but also with each other. And I love it. And
That's
I
cool.
I absolutely have always loved gardening. I haven't done it since we moved here to North Carolina, but I gardened aggressively in California and always had such good results. And I love I'm not good with house plants per se because I tend to kill them, but I know how to grow vegetable. And I also love how they're doing sustainable living, like living off the land. So they eat deer meat and they don't go out and buy bananas because they're not in season, 24/7. They're being shipped in from somewhere else. And they do these challenges over the winter where they live off of things that they have canned, frozen, flash frozen, fried, preserved, and it's so cool because they're young
That's
and
very
feel like
cool.
they're yeah, and they have courses that you can take online, and they do a lot of cooking, which I really enjoy. And I love that, a young couple is instead of like, focusing on lipstick, uh, eyeshadow and eyeliner, they're focusing on I mean, and I don't care about like don't come for me. I mean, it's great if you want lipstick, blush, and eyeliner, but they're focusing on, something else. So it's
Right,
very
right.
cool. So check it out if you are interested in urban farming. You might find something you enjoy. Um, and that takes us to letters from our listeners. And you
Ooh,
guys,
can't wait.
today
Can't
we
wait.
have a letter from someone that has not written in before. It's a friend of mine that I went to college with. Her name is Eunice. And she sent me a message. She said, I'm so behind on the podcast. It's a little frustrating because I listen to them. I have all these opinions and comments I want to make. And then I think, oh shit, that was months ago. So it's pointless to say anything. I let her know that it's never pointless to say something and to let
Yeah.
us know at any point. She listened to the longest third date and she had very different opinions than you and me, Cheryl. So I said to her,
Oh, oh,
let us know what your opinions are because we will
yes,
read them and give you a shout out on the podcast. So thank you,
yes,
Eunice,
yes.
for reaching out. We love getting letters from people besides, we love getting letters from Doreen and Francoise. Don't get me wrong. But we also
Don't
get
stop.
excited, and Noreen. But when we get letters from people besides Noreen, Doreen, and Francoise, then we get really, really excited. And
Yeah, you guys, it doesn't matter how long ago the episode aired, because every
right,
episode we've done is our near and dear to our hearts. So it doesn't matter. Write in your opinion. That's what we want.
exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. And
Exactly.
on that note, Cheryl,
Oh
we
boy.
are
Uh-huh.
taking an extreme, like, left turn, and we're going to be talking about a documentary, Cheryl. So take it away.
Okay, yes, we are taking a very extreme turn, and this is it does not it's not a murder story, but I will say I'm going to give a content warning that this piece contains details of sexual abuse and suicide. Um, Now, I'm going to base this information on the Netflix documentary that was released May 26, 2017. I also got some information from Wikipedia. Um, the Netflix documentary is called Abducted in Plain Sight, the Jan Broberg story. Now, there have been probably several. I know there's another one on, I believe it was Peacock, called Friend of the Family. So I'm sorry, don't quote me on that. I can't remember what it was. But this is the one I'm going to base my information on. And I have to say up front, because it's going to be a little confusing. There is a Bob Broberg and a Bob Birchtold. So Broberg is Jan Broberg's father, and I'm going to mostly refer to Bob Birchtold as Birchtold, except for one little part because the kids called him B. But anyway, I just want to say that up front because I don't want you to be confused when you're listening to it, because this story is wild on its own without the names confusing you. So um, hold on to your hats and your butts and whatever else. Okay. So we're going
And
to
your nuts and your nuts
and futs
and
your
your
futs
cronut.
for the people in Hawaii, your futs. All right, so we're going to Pocatello, Idaho. Jan Broberg was born July 31st, 1962. And in Wikipedia, this is what it says. She was an American actress, singer, dancer, and kidnapping victim. How would you
Wow.
like that on your Wikipedia page? That's pretty intense. So the documentary opens with a very creepy voiceover by Robert or Bob Birchtold. And he says, she was a beautiful little girl, very bright and lively and very lively. She smiled brightly at me, and as she smiled, there were definite dimples in both cheeks. My heart went out to her. I walked up to her, put my arm around her, and drew her close to me and held her tight. She looked up at me with her eyes beaming, and I knew that I had found the little girl that I was searching for.
Yeah,
Cringe.
that was super creepy.
It's he has like this soft voice that makes it even creepier. So I cringed and I grimaced while I was listening to this, and they also showed as he was they were playing him speaking. They showed pictures of a young Jan Broberg with her arms wrapped around his neck. So it was extra creepy. So in the
Mhm.
opening of the documentary, we meet Jan's father, Bob Broberg, like I said, and then we meet Jan's sister, Karen, and Jan's mother, Mary Ann Broberg. Jan's mother is soft spoken, and she says that They had the type of neighborhood where you never lock your door. You could trust anyone. Now, Joy, I have to tell you that this is one of my pet peeves when they do a story on murder or anything like, as tragic as this, and they say, it was a neighborhood where you never had to lock your door. I mean, I don't know where that is. Because there's like stories from way back when people living out in the country that have gotten killed, like the whole family is murdered. So I don't know where this is that you never had to lock your door, but that's what she says. And she probably, in hindsight, probably would have wanted to live by a different creed. So Jan has two younger sisters, Karen. So Jan is the oldest and Karen is the middle child and Susan is the youngest, and they're all 2 years apart. And Jan was definitely the big sister. She was the bossy one. Jan says her mom and dad were traditional, sweet parents. Traditional is pretty funny when you hear the rest of this. Her mother was her mother was a stay-at-home mom. Her father was a florist. He owned a flower shop for 40 years. Jan felt completely loved and completely secure. She says she and her sisters were listened to. She says she thinks this was crucial for all of them surviving what would eventually happen. And now enters Bob Berchtold. Marianne met him in June 1972. She met him, Berchtold, and his wife and their kids at church. The Berchtolds had 5 children, and some of them were the same age as Bob and Marianne's children. The Berchtolds and the Brobergs eventually became very good friends.
And so as you go into this story, I think the thing to really remember is that these two families were both Mormon families, and they had very strong religious beliefs. They were very involved in their church communities, and it comes up a lot during this documentary.
Yes, very good point. So Bob Berchtold would pick up the Broberg kids up. He would pick them up in the mornings, and they would be so happy to see him. And eventually, they started calling him B. Just about every night, B would go to the Broberg's house and talk to Bob and Marianne. And he was very engaged with their kids too. But B's attention was definitely on Jan. B had several nicknames for Jan, but finally settled on Dolly. A tape plays with Berchtold's voice again, creepily talking about Dolly in a way no man should speak about a little girl. At one point, he says in the tape, she looked up at me, I bent over, and we kissed. No man could love any woman more. Remember, I believe she's 12 at this point. Bob and Marianne were
creepy AF.
Creepy AF. Capital AF. Bob and Marianne were initially annoyed with the special attention Berchtold gave Jan. Marianne says Berchtold's fascination with Jan was a little disturbing. Jan says Berchtold was like a second father to her. She completely loved him, completely trusted him, and felt extremely safe. She felt like she was one of his children. Excuse me. So Jan and her sister Karen shared a bedroom, and Berchtold once told them, wouldn't it be neat for them to have their own rooms? And so he built a wall in their room and made the room into 2 separate rooms, separating Jan and Karen. My question is, where is the mom and dad? And what you got to say about this? Some man comes in and divides your kids' room into 2 rooms. Like, what the? I mean, is that not strange, or is it just me? I find that very strange, weird.
But one of the things I think that okay, and I don't want to. I have to just say this and say it and put it out there. But one of the things that I find so interesting is in their religion. I feel like there was a lot of behaviors that if you were not in this religion, that you would think someone was crossing boundaries that they shouldn't. I think we have to also focus on how enamored this whole family was with this guy. The parents, he was you find out, I'm jumping the gun a little bit, but
don't jump ahead.
He is making a concerted effort to woo the whole family.
Okay, so October 17, 1974, Berchtold calls Marianne and told her he wanted to take Jan out horseback riding. Berchtold shows up at their house to pick up Jan, but Marianne is hesitant to let her go, saying Jan has a piano lesson and school the next day. So Berchtold offers to pick up Jan after her piano lesson and take her straight to horseback riding. Jan is pleading with her mother to let her go. Marianne tells her she better be back before Bob gets home from dinner. That's the father. Berchtold promises to have her back. So Berchtold picks up Jan from her piano lesson and tells her he has her quote unquote allergy pills. He tells her she better take it before they go to the horses. She took the pills and off they went. Jan says she must have passed out pretty quickly because she has no recollection of getting to the stables, no recollection of the drive, no recollection of him. And later on, Jan does not return home when she is expected to. And when 9 p.m. rolls around, Marianne contacts Berchtold's wife, Gail. Gail then goes to the Broberg house, and Marianne says she thinks she should call the police, but Gail calms her down, saying she's sure Berchtold will be back with Jan any minute. And so they waited. Now it's Thursday. I'm sorry, it was Thursday when they went horseback riding. And after 2 days of Berchtold and Jan missing, Bob finally says they better get the law involved. 2 days, everyone.
Yeah,
On Saturday,
and remember, nobody's texting. This is 1974, so there's no cell phones. There's no texting. Their daughter has gotten in a car with their best friends, like dad and husband, and like disappeared. That's like,
yeah,
I don't even know what the hell. I'm sorry. I would be climbing up a tree and going berserk for 2 days.
right? Yeah. But after 2 days, Bob says they should get the law involved. And so on Saturday morning, now remember, they went horseback, quote unquote, horseback riding on Thursday. And now on Saturday morning, Marianne called the FBI. They said the office was closed on the weekend and told her to call the office in Butte, Montana. Marianne chose not to call because she didn't want to get all these people worked up over nothing. And so they waited and waited and decided if Jan and Berchtold weren't back by Sunday, they'd call Butte, Montana then. So October 22nd, 1974, day 5 of Berchtold and Jan missing. Day 5,
That's
everyone, 5.
That's just cuckoo birds to me.
It is
I'm
cuckoo. It
sorry.
is cuckoo crazy. They went horseback riding supposedly, and now it's day 5 of them missing. So lead FBI Special Agent Pete Welsh receives the call about Berchtold and Jan. He and his partner went over to the Brobergs' house right away. They talked to Bob and Marianne for several hours. They were told Berchtold was a close friend of theirs, a neighbor. Berchtold was a businessman and a member of the LDS faith and a pillar in their community. Remember that?
Real pillar.
Well, yeah.
Yikes.
He had lots of friends, and the Brobergs did not suspect any foul play, even though Jan had been missing for 5 days. Marianne says she didn't think Berchtold kidnapped Jan, just that they had gone someplace, someplace with her. And the FBI agent Pete, I know.
That is so crazy.
It's cringe. It's unbelievable. And so they're interviewing this FBI agent, and he says, I had to drill it into their mind, Bob and Marianne, her parents, that your daughter is gone. She has been kidnapped.
Yeah, it's nuts.
It's so crazy. So Pete and his partner then go over to interview Gail Berchtold. She told them that they had a motorhome in the storage unit. And so Pete and his partner go to the storage unit, and the motorhome is gone. Police receive a call reporting an abandoned Ford vehicle on registered Rock State Park. The keys were inside the vehicle. The side door window on the driver's side was broken out. There was a small amount of blood on the inside of the driver's door. It was Bob Berchtold's car. The window had been broken out from the inside out. He broke the window so he could have an excuse that somebody kidnapped them. There were tire tracks from a motorhome around there and one set of footprints because he probably carried Jan. They knew he had Jan, but didn't know where they were. So there was a nationwide search. They sent out APBs, all point bulletins, to all law enforcement throughout the country, even border security for Canada and Mexico.
Is
And the
that what
search.
APB stands for? I didn't even know that. Did you have to look that up, or have you always known that?
Are you kidding? Or what? You're serious?
I'm totally serious. I didn't know what an APB was.
Oh,
Who's
yeah.
this?
Well, I'm practically a self-deputized law
Are you
enforcement agent.
officer?
No, I always knew that. Yeah, APB. And you know what a bolo is, right?
No.
Oh
A
my goodness.
a necktie?
A bolo, when they put out a bolo, it's a be on the lookout. Be on the lookout. Be on the lookout for a bolo tie.
For fuck's sake, how am I supposed to know?
I just knew this. Yeah, APB is all points bulletin. So anyway, the search goes on for weeks. And as the investigation continued, FBI agents found out that Bob Berchtold had an infatuation for young girls. They found out he tried to get 2 other little girls, but their parents had cut him off, which is what you're supposed to do. And then he found Jan. Bob Berchtold's brother, his own brother, is in this documentary. His name is Joe. And he says that his brother was always a sexual pervert. He always liked little girls.
I gotta just stop. This guy, Bob Berchtold's brother, Joe, I'm sorry. Like, I know he was in this documentary and I know he said that stuff about his brother, but one, he didn't say it until he was on the documentary. Like, number 2, like, why wasn't he telling the freaking all the neighbors and the church members and everywhere Berchtold moved to? And number 2, later on, he hires his brother to sell cars for him. And so if you know your brother's a pervert, which by the way was a catch-all phrase for anything people didn't like back then, he was clearly a pedophile. Right. And why and not convicted because he was jumping from church community and preying on all these church people who thought he was an upstanding religious man. Why not tell those people so that so the creep can't get a job anywhere? But then later on, when his life's falling apart, you give him a freaking job.
Ugh. Okay, but wait, we haven't gotten there yet. But okay, so I'm gonna stop and ask this question, and maybe Doreen will answer this one too. So remember in the everyone.
Let's go, Doreen. Let's go, Doreen. Let's go.
Come on, Doreen. Pay attention. I'm directing this to you specifically. So in the Laura Ackerson murder, remember when Joy and I had this hypothetical about what I would do if she showed up on my doorstep with blood all over her, a knife in her hand, a body in a bag, dripping blood? Well, I have a question for all of you and you, Joy. If your sibling, brother or sister, because I'm not going to discriminate, was a pedophile, would you report them? Would you tell all the neighbors about them? Oh, Joy. It's like you saying you would call the cops if I showed up bloody and a knife and a body in a bag.
I totally would tell everybody. I would never ever let them be around my kids. Ever.
Well, that for sure. But if your brother was brother or sister or your friend,
remember, by law, if they're convicted, they cannot be within so many feet of children, which means they can't go by churches or schools. They can't have jobs where they come into contact with children. And by law, they can't even be, I think it's like 50 yards or something like that, which means they wouldn't even be able to stand down at the mailbox. You know what I mean? Okay. And that's why when they go to neighborhoods, when people run them out of the neighborhoods, when they find they're moving in, because if you have a family with children, you don't want that person living next to you.
I get that, Joy. But I want to ask everybody out there, if you had a sibling or a very, very close friend that you loved and adored, and they were a pedophile, would you go around telling everybody? And I want you all to ask yourself honestly, like for real, not what you think you should do, but what you think you really would do. Because I have to tell you,
how are
Even
you going to introduce him? Hey guys, my friend Martin came into town to visit. We haven't seen him for 5 years. Just so you know, he's a pedophile. But welcome
yeah,
him. Welcome, Martin. Hey, why don't you get a plate and help yourself to some food?
yeah, I just think it's so much easier said than done. But I respect you.
Mhm.
I'm just saying that I wouldn't call the cops on you right away if you showed up with blood on your shirt and carrying a body over
A
your you had a
Carrying
body flung.
a bag
No,
full of body parts.
yeah. If you rolled up with a drum with a muriatic acid in it. Anyway, write in and tell us what you think, everyone. Okay, so we're going to go back in time, and now we're going to June of 1973. Sorry, I'm going to jump around a little bit. Just know that at the beginning of the documentary, Jan is missing with Berchtold. Okay, but we're going to go back to June of 1973. Jan had accompanied the Berchtold family on vacation to Seattle, which even that, well, I guess she was friends with their kids. So the parents are probably like, yeah, you can go with the
Well, and
Berchtolds.
this is 3 years before uh wait, when did the girl go missing? Oh, in 74. This was
74.
the year before. So she
Yeah.
was 11 when that happened. So
Yeah.
maybe they had, I mean, remember they met in 1972.
What did I say? Right.
So 73 could have been like less than a year after they met, and it was a year before their kid went missing. So maybe they didn't really like, maybe the creep factor hadn't crept in yet.
Maybe, but I think his infatuation with her reared its ugly head pretty early. But anyway, okay, so Jan goes with the Berchtold family on a vacation to Seattle. And when they return, Berchtold tells a story that night. Um, Tells a story that one night at dinner when they were in Seattle, Jan had been rocking back and forth at the table, and he said, "Oh, she must not be feeling well." And so he took her back to the motel. And she says she remembers waking up and seeing Berchtold naked. Ah, gosh. Okay.
Ew.
So now we're going to go back even further in time. So fall of 1972, 2 years before the kidnapping, Berchtold called Marianne from his furniture store. Oh, hold on to your butts, guys, because this is where it's already cuckoo crazy, but we're going to go really like what's even crazier than cuckoo crazy? I don't know. Berchtold calls Marianne from his furniture store. He owned a furniture store and told her he couldn't get out for lunch and asked her to bring him a sandwich. And she thought, okay. And it started with that, taking lunch to him on occasions when he called. And Berchtold started giving her attention that made her feel special, telling her how beautiful her body was, how beautiful her legs are. And she starts to fall for him.
And
Bob,
ladies and gentlemen of the jury, just so you know, this process is what we like to refer to as grooming.
grooming. Correct. Bob Broberg says that Berchtold was very sexually experienced,
And
and
how the hell would he know? I mean, seriously.
you know what, you guys, I'm not making this stuff up. We're not making this stuff up. You can watch it for yourself. The other thing is, it's not like I read an article on this and maybe it was taken out of context. Maybe it was misconstrued. Bob Broberg is on the documentary speaking these
Yeah.
words from his own mouth. So it is
Yeah,
incredible.
and and for those of you who are maybe in like some very like conservative or fundamentalist religion, if you're listening to this and someone comes up to you at church one day and says, "I'm very sexually experienced," there's a 99.9% chance that that guy or girl is full of shit.
You heard it here, folks. Okay, so Bob Broberg says that Berchtold was very sexually experienced, and he was not happy with his sex life with his wife. That Berchtold wasn't happy with his sex life with his wife. So one day, again, you guys, this is Bob Broberg telling this story, which I am just incredulous that he would get on camera and say this. But he says one day Berchtold showed up at Broberg's flower shop and asked him to go for a ride. Berchtold tells Broberger he can't stand his wife and he needs to have sex. Broberg could see that Berchtold was sexually aroused in the car. They're both in the car. Berchtold's telling Broberg how sexually frustrated it is, and he has a boner. So then Berchtold then asks
Feel like
Broberg.
we're in middle school. You're all, and then he pops a boner.
Berchtold then asks Broberg if he can give him some relief. And y'all know what that means, right? So Broberg did. He gave Berchtold a hand job.
Okay,
Are you all
gotta
listening? Hello?
I gotta jump in here.
Oh my
That
God.
this part of the documentary, literally, the fact that Bob Broberg was comfortable telling this part of the story
This story
for the documentarians blew my head off, because the other thing is that is not a normal situation under any circumstance. It's not like these people were in a swingers club.
No, it's so unbelievable. I don't know whether to be wowed or impressed. I don't know what to be that someone would get on camera and admit this.
I also I wonder about obviously I question the judgment of the Broberg family seriously.
You think? You think? I think they had many lapses in judgment.
The wife is falling for Berchtold. The husband is giving him upsy downsy hand love in the car. I mean, what the fuck?
Good judgment was not one of their virtues. Oh my God. Okay.
But, I mean, I get that, like, you know, these are just human beings, but it's like,
oh God, Joy, come on.
I can tell you, I must lead a very dull life, because I have never, ever found myself in any situation remotely. And if you're out there and you've had this happen to you, please write in and tell us, because
gosh, please.
if you're brave I would enough. Probably, once I stopped laughing hysterically, because if someone asked me this, I would assume that it was like a big joke and I was on camera.
Oh my God.
And maybe like, or Cheryl likes to call it CCTV, and someone was recording me for like a joke, and then they were going to jump out and be like, prank, we pranked you, or
right?
You know, something like that. Or I would jump out of the car and probably die because it's going 65. And now I'm like rolling around in the middle of the interstate, because this is just not normal.
Yeah, that's an understatement. Okay, so according to the FBI, in January of 1974, Berchtold was reprimanded by the High Council of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints because of his involvement with another young girl. The LDS Church decided they would counsel him, and he went to a counselor in Idaho Falls. Berchtold had also gone to a clinical psychologist who would help him get over his obsession with Jan. He should get his money back for that. When he went home, he had to tell the Brobergs that he was being treated for the abuse he suffered as a child. He then says, as part of his therapy, he needs to spend time alone with their daughters. Let me read that again. Let me read that again, everybody. Berchtold, after coming home from, he has been reprimanded, right, by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They send him to counseling. He comes home and he tells the Brobergs that he was being treated for the abuse he suffered as a child. He then says, as part of his therapy, he needs to spend time alone with their daughters. And Bob Broberg says, what, Joy?
Okay.
Dun dun. He says,
so
okay.
Crazy.
He said, after this guy, okay, he says he trusts Berchtold. And then Berchtold then goes and lies down next to Jan in her bed. The Brobergs weren't comfortable with this, but it was part of his therapy after all, right? I guess.
But the part that just kills me is when they're interviewing them, at no point does Bob Broberg say, I was not comfortable with giving my friend Birch told an upsy downsy hand job.
That
And
can
at no
count.
time did the wife say I wasn't comfortable with bringing sandwiches to Birchhold and letting him compliment me on how sexy I was in my legs. But they're not comfortable with, I mean, it's like, do you see how it's kind of like
Oh
we're
my
I
gosh.
mean, what kind of parents were these people? Like what kind I
I
mean,
don't know.
there's a lot of questions
Oh,
about their sanity for me.
yeah. And both of them, this is what's so incredible. It's not like one of them said to the other, hey, Birch told is trying to get in your pants. Or the wife telling him, hey, Birch told is, like it's like they both
And
fell under.
imagine being in that conversation, like like Broberg's one night, they're getting dressed to get into bed, and she's like, "I had a really nice day today," and he goes, "Oh, what did you do?" "Well, I went shopping and bought myself a new pair of shoes and a matching handbag, and oh, um, Birchtold asked me to bring him a PB&J at lunch, and so I did, and I wore my short skirt so he could tell me my legs were beautiful." And then she's all, "What did you do?" And he goes, "I went for a ride with our friend Birchtold. I gave him an upsies, downsies, handsies in the car because I could see he'd popped a boner." I mean, it's just so crazy.
I know, you guys. It just hang on because you do. If you don't know this story, it gets even crazier. So it turns out, by no surprise, that the clinical psychologist had had his license revoked. He gave Birchtold
God.
tapes with weird messages on them that Birchtold would play as he laid next to Jan. He would give her quote unquote vitamins and other things for her allergies, when in fact it was later discovered to be sleeping pills. Bob Broberg says they had no idea that Birchtold had sexual designs on Jan. They weren't sure what a child molester was. He goes on to say he doesn't know how they were so gullible when there were so many red flags. Now, I ask you,
I
Joy, is it possible that back in the 70s, this is not the 50s or 40s or 30s, this is the 70s? Do you think it is really possible that two adults would not know when
well,
someone had sex?
I will say this. Maybe they were both raised in the Mormon church and they were also raised very conservatively. That is a possibility. And I will say that the FBI agent who at the time of the recording and the making of this documentary, he looked like he was probably in his late 70s, right? Wouldn't you say that?
Mhm.
Early
Yes, I would.
80s. He did several things. He referred to Birchtold as a pervert, and
Mhm.
he referred to him as having being unnatural. And the combination of using both of those terms was it was very clear that learn he did not grow up or go to school or was educated during a time when there was the proper terminology that we use today, which indicated to me that, because everything that was considered deviant at a certain point, which includes a lot of things that we no longer consider deviant, and I'm not talking about pedophilia, obviously, they
Mhm.
used words like pervert and they used terms like unnatural. They would use that, for example, to say unnatural would also encompass homosexuality or
Oh, yeah, I was
incest
just gonna say that.
or
Mhm.
yeah, or a man wearing a woman's clothing, for example.
Right.
So if you
It was
think
a
about it,
catch-all. It
it
was a
was a
catch-all.
catch-all for illegal
Mhm.
activity and not illegal activity, and there was like a lack of general education surrounding it, and so it was kind of a red flag that even the FBI agent was using outdated terminology to describe
Terminology.
basically pedophilia, which obviously is something completely different than like someone popping up wearing their mom's underwear, you know?
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. And you know what? I'm kind of making jokes sometimes because it seems so ludicrous, but I do like I think you make a very, very valid point. And this is the second time I've watched the entire thing again. I was still blown away the second time, even though I knew the story already. But I am trying to understand and trying to be, um, put myself in their shoes type of thing, give them the benefit of the doubt because I'm sure they would have preferred for this never to have happened, right? So I try to give them the benefit of the doubt. It's a little hard, but okay. So according to court transcripts, Birchtold slept in Jan's bed approximately 4 times a week for 6 months, right up until the day she was taken. So now we're going to go back to October 17, 1974, and we're at day one of Jan's abduction, right? The whole horseback riding incident. So now Jan's talking in the documentary, and she says she remembers waking up in the dark in the motorhome. She was lying on a bed. Her wrists and ankles were bound, and she had a monotone voice talking in her ear. She could see a white box next to her on the pillow. She thought she had been kidnapped by a UFO. She fell in and out of sleep, and when she woke up again, the restraints were off. She had been informed by 2 aliens that she herself was actually part alien. She was told her mother was her biological mother, but her father was not her biological father. She was told she had a father from an alien planet. The alien voice told her that her mission was to have a child that would save the alien planet by the time she turned 16. And this box told her that if she could not complete her mission, her youngest sister, Susan, would be taken. She was told to go to the front of the motorhome, and there she would meet the male companion that's going to help do this mission. And when she went out to the front room, there was B. Remember, she referred to him as B on the couch. But she was relieved to see someone she trusted. Birchtold was cut. He was cut and covered in blood. He wasn't moving. His eyes were closed. She thought he was dead. She's crying and shaking him and trying to wake him up. So remember the car that was found with the window punched out? So he's lying there all bloodied and bleeding. He wakes up and he tells her that as they were driving to the stables, a white light shone on them and the car started to vibrate and move and shake, and they must have been taken by this light. She completely knew that he was the male companion and that together they were supposed to have a child. Remember, she is 12 and he is in his 40s. She knew the whole situation was strange, but truly felt that she was an alien. And the first few weeks of her abduction, she had no concept of how much time had gone by, but she knew she had been drugged most of the time. Birchtold shows her some sex books, and the box tells her it's time to ask the male companion to quote unquote do what makes people happy. And then Birchtold, this is when he starts to rape her.
Remember, this is called Abducted in Plain Sight. And if you think that this is the worst part of the story, oh no, it gets
Oh no.
worse.
Oh yeah, you guys, I'm telling you. So now it's November 20th, 1974. It's day 35 of Jan's abduction. And Birchtold calls his brother Joe and tells him he wants Joe to call Marianne and get written permission for Birchtold and Jan to come back to the US and get married, because they were married in Mexico, but it isn't legal in the US. Under Mexican law, you have to be 12 years old. So they qualified and they had gotten married in Mexico with her being 12 years old. Joe does what Birchtold asks, and he calls the Brobergs and tells them that Birchtold will come back to the US with Jan if he can marry her. And of course, for once in this whole thing, they show some sense of sanity and they refuse to give him permission to marry Jan. Joe decides at that time. So now he's doing the right thing, Joy, and he realizes that he needs to help the FBI bring his brother and Jan back. So they tapped Joe's phone and were able to locate Birchtold and Jan. FBI contact Mexican authorities and they find Birchtold and put him in jail. Birchtold then bribes the Mexican cops with his gold ring to bring Jan to him. So now she's been saved for this during this abduction, and Broberg is able to freaking get the Mexican cops to bring her to him in the jail, which I was just like,
yeah,
no one's protecting. It's unbelievable. No one's protecting her. He tells Jan he'd been visited by the aliens and coaches her about what she can't talk about, including the sexual contact, or Susan would be taken and her father would go blind and she would be vaporized. But you have to remember, y'all, she believes this. She is a little child that she's had this box next to her for God knows how long, telling her all these weird things.
Well,
So
not
she
only
believes.
that, remember when you teach your children shit like, I mean, I'm not trying to say always Santa Claus, but like when you create like intangible tales, like tales that are not true, and and also when children don't feel like they can believe what's happening to them, a lot of times they believe the fantastic.
Yes, yes,
And
exactly.
this man obviously had like groomed the hell out of this whole family
Oh my
and told
God.
them all shit that was not real, and had taken in the parents and all the children. And now he has done the thing that he's been wanting to do all along, which was access this child. So all this work to groom the whole family has clearly worked.
Yep. Yep. So Bob and Marianne fly to Mexico to get Jan, and Jan fell to pieces seeing her mom and dad. But she's worried about what's going to happen to B. Bob says Jan would not sit near him on the plane. The Broberg sent the marriage certificate back to Mexico with instructions for the marriage to be annulled. So just want to remind you guys, when they were in the motorhome, she's been told by this higher, UFO being that her father is not her real father. So she's starting to distance herself from him. So Berchtold is arrested in Mexico and
But
brought back to the.
also remember, psychologically, she has been abused now by her father's best friend and by a close person in the family. And also, she's distancing herself from the man who is supposed to be her protector. But also, she's been subjected to, this sexual contact with an adult man. So she's got all, and she's a child. So she has
Mhm.
all this like horrible shit that's happened to her. She can't process it. So of course she doesn't want to have anything to do with her dad. And I think it's at this point in the documentary where he says to the camera, when they picked her up, she was not our little girl. And I really, really,
Mhm.
really, like, my skin literally was like, I was like boiling when he said that. One, she was his little girl. When what happens is, and I read through it. I read him to say that she was no longer a little girl. And so
Mm.
by him saying she was no longer our little girl, he was
Uh,
basically saying by her no longer being pure and somehow being sullied and having access to adult, contact with a man, she was no longer his little girl. And I
mm.
really, really, like, my blood was boiling when he said that. Now again,
Ooh.
he could have said it like, like he did with the upsy downsies handsies without using his brain, and he just like spit it out. But to me, I read into it deeper than that. So,
That's very, very interesting.
mhm.
Yeah, that's a good point. Um, so Berchtold is arrested in Mexico and brought back to the US. He was brought before a grand jury and brought up on kidnapping charges. When Jan was examined by a physician, the physician said her hymen had not been broken. They could see no trauma of sexual abuse. Now, what did you think of that? So, I does that
Well,
okay, we're about to go into sex education here.
oh
So,
God.
if
Okay, first of
the
all, it really bothered me that they subjected her to this kind of exam. And number two, it really bothered me because of what the father had said previously.
that the physician said her hymen was not had not been broken. So I'm going to ask a like sex education 101. If the head of a penis goes into a vagina, does that break your hymen, or is the hymen further up? Like you'd have to be penetrated further.
Uh, I don't, I'm not a medical doctor, gynecologist, or OBGYN, or
Oh,
a
yes, you are. I
health
thought you
person.
were. You're not?
But
You're not an
here's,
OBGYN?
here's what I will say. Everybody's body is different. Your body is different than my body. And you know what? Some people got tits that point down, some got them that point side to side. Who knows? Maybe hers was further up, maybe hers was to the left or the right.
Well, I'm
Some
just the
people,
reason.
some girls are born without one at all. So
Okay,
there.
but the reason I'm bringing it up is because in the documentary, she says that he puts only the head of his penis in there. And then later on, when they say the physician says her hymen was not broken, I was thinking, was that calculated on Berchtold's part to not penetrate her all the way? You know what I mean? So
Oh,
that he could protect
no,
himself.
probably. I don't know. That guy was fucking crazy. So I
Well, I
wouldn't
just
put
couldn't.
anything past him. I mean, come on. He's basically groomed the whole family. So, I mean, why stop with,
Why stop there? Yeah.
yeah.
Anyway, anyway. So the Brobergs are advised by the FBI agent. I mean, Pete, our friend Pete Welsh, he just looked so frustrated when he was on camera. He's like, they were advised not to have any contact with Berchtold or even Berchtold's kids, and they did not listen.
Yeah.
So you guys, when we said it's going to get crazier, it's going to get crazier. We are not lying. We would not lie to you. We promise. So then Gail, Berchtold's wife, comes to the Brobergs' house and asks them to drop all charges against Berchtold. And if they don't, all their dirty laundry will be exposed. Marianne's affair and Bob's hand job, or upsy daisy, upsy downsy, upsy doozy. What do you call it?
Upsies, downsies, handsies.
Ring
I mean,
around the rosy.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. First of all, Gail is complicit in her husband's
Oh,
abuse,
yes, she is.
and
Yes,
she
she
is part
is.
and parcel to this happening. She
Mm-mm.
probably knew all along that he was a
Oh,
pedophile.
oh,
And
yes.
the second thing is, by threatening to air the dirty laundry, all it did was, and the parents being terrified that that information would come out, all it did was just solidify in my mind that those parents didn't give a rat's ass about their child and their child's mental stability and what had happened to them and the trauma that their daughter had gone through. All they cared about was making sure that their name was not besmirched in their religious community. And again, I blame whatever, crazy Kool-Aid they were drinking at their church, because if they didn't care about their reputation and their church in their church community, they would have done the right thing and they would have said, fuck our reputations.
True.
I don't care. I'm
Yeah.
going to protect my child no matter what.
Well, if they were in their right minds, it wouldn't even gotten this far. But when the FBI goes to after Jan and Berchtold don't come back for, I don't know if it's 5 days or whatever, um, when they go to Gail's house, or they go to talk to Gail, and she's like, well, there's a motorhome and the thing. She knew already what her husband was doing. And I will
Oh
say
yeah.
this. I will say this. Okay, you coming to my house, bloody bag, bloody body slung over your shoulder, whatever. Okay, that, and like a close friend being a pedophile, and whether I would tell everybody. What I will say this: if I knew my husband was involved in shit like this, I would have his ass in a sling in a heartbeat. I cannot understand women like Gail, and I'm very sorry, but who what is it? What are you living that you can turn a blind eye to your husband? She knew he did it with two other
I
girls.
I think a lot of it probably is like family trauma, like history, so generational trauma. So probably the Brobergs had in their home, in their family, they had generational trauma, and so did the Birchtolds. And so remember, Gail has probably failed at protecting her own children from this man.
Oh
So
God.
you think about generational trauma. If you're subjected to it and your children are subjected to trauma and their children, these are patterns that are repeated from generation to generation. And that was the only thing that I could come up with in this story
In this
that made
crazy ass
that
story.
would make sense to me, because none of this story made any sense. And
No.
I'm thinking, if the parents knew what that was like, and their parent, because again, they were, like, just like me saying that the wife had to be part and parcel to her husband's abuse, if she had experienced generational trauma, family trauma as well, like this, then she's more likely to keep her mouth shut. And
Yeah,
he
yeah,
would
yeah.
have found someone to marry. Berchtold would have found someone to marry, Gail, who would keep her mouth shut,
Yes, exactly.
the
Hmm.
just like the other family, the Bergdorfs or whatever their names are.
Brobergs. I told you the names were going to be.
Broberg. Just like the Brobergs probably also had family
Uh-huh.
trauma that, they were terrified of, and they had probably grown up hearing, you never air your dirty laundry, you always keep it in the house. We don't want people to know that, this is our family story. And so you have generation after generation of this, and it just makes for a breeding ground for this Berchtold guy to walk in and go, I'm in control here.
Yeah, yeah, it's true. You're right. He sought out a woman, yeah, that would go along with him. You're right.
Yeah.
Um, okay, so here is more craziness, you guys. So Gail, goes to their house and says if they don't drop the charges, all of their dirty laundry will be exposed. So what do? They signed the affidavit saying Jan was not taken by force and was not held or confined against her will at any time. More
I
craziness.
You know what broke my heart about this was at this point, I felt like they didn't focus enough on Jan and her recovery and her life, because the the thing that broke my heart about this was the ultimate betrayal that this 12-year-old girl had by her own parents.
Oh,
You know,
most
just and the
definitely.
knowledge that her parents betrayed her in this manner. And why? Just to protect their own like weaknesses. It was
Okay,
so
but let me tell you though, at this point in real time, at this point in their lives though, she does not think her parents betrayed her. She is actually on the side of Birchtold because she
because
is in love with him.
she's also brainwashed.
She's still a kid at this point. She believes she's an alien. She really does. She believes in this mission that she has to have a child with him by the time she's 16. She believes this. So she's wanting this to go away as well, the charges on Birchtold. She loves her B. She loves him. She's brainwashed, so she loves him. Okay, so Birchtold's trial was postponed and he was released on his own recognizance. Again, bad. I mean, the guy is a pedophile and he's being released on his own recognizance. He moves to Ogden, Utah to work at his brother Joe's car dealership. And
Oh yeah,
Gail and
good
the
job,
kids.
Joe. Good job hiring this creep. After you've
Yeah,
already said he's a pervert, good
yeah,
job hiring
a
him to work at
pedophile.
your business. Way to
Okay, and
throw him a bone.
I just want to say this in my defense because I know people are going to be going like, God, what kind of person is she that she wouldn't warn people that she knew of a pedophile that was in close proximity? I would do everything possible to keep children so that the children wouldn't be in any of a compromised situation. That I would definitely do that, but I just like if it was I hate to say my brothers, but I'm just saying if it was a sibling, I just don't know. Anyway, so he works at Joe's dealership, and then Gail and the kids stay behind in Pocatello, Idaho. But Birchtold came home every weekend, and every weekend he was in church. And one night, Birchtold enters Jan's bedroom. She hears this white box again, and he starts making plans for them to continue their mission. Birchtold continues to manipulate Jan, and she eventually feels she loves him like a husband and tells her mother she wants to marry him.
Yeah.
Eventually, Birchtold gets Marianne to come to his motorhome, and one thing leads to another, and they have sex. So she would continue to have this affair for 8 months. Birchtold tells Bob, and during that period, Birchtold visited Jan on 9 different occasions, and twice they spent the night together alone. And it was always about sex, is what Jan says. Bob Broberg files for divorce from Marianne after he finds out about her affair with Birchtold. He takes the girls and Birch Toad, he takes his daughters so that Birch Toad would no longer have access to them. Birch Toad tries to convince Marianne to let Bob go, that he would get her an apartment. So Birch Toad tries to convince Marianne to let her husband go and that he would get her an apartment. She is advised by a lawyer to get away from Birch Toad, and she does not want a divorce, so she eventually goes back home to Bob. In June
I
of
gotta say,
1970.
I just want to jump in here.
Mm-hmm.
I was really intrigued by her body language and his body language and the way they talked about their relationship and how much emotion there was when they talked about their marriage falling apart potentially. And the only thing that jumped out to me was selfish. Selfish, selfish, selfish. They cared more
Mm.
about what happened between the two of them and what they were
Uh-huh.
doing than they
Yep.
cared about their child. It was really, really telling.
Yes, for sure. Yep. So now in June of 1976, this is 12 months after kidnapping Jan, Birch Told agreed to a plea deal. He pled guilty to a felony charge of kidnapping. The judge, hold on, sit down, everybody. The judge sentenced him to 5 years and reduced all 5 years down to 45 days. Okay. Birch Told moves away from Pocatello and buys a family fun center in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. Jan wants to go there and work there for the summer, and her parents refuse. Jan becomes argumentative and starts picking fights with her sister. She becomes combative with her parents, and she makes life miserable for everyone in the family. And then Marianne receives a call from Birch Told, who tells her that Jan is coming to Jackson Hole. She's going to get on the highway and start hitchhiking if they don't let her come. Pitching. So eventually, I told you this is going to get crazier. You guys, she's already been kidnapped. The guy is, he pleads guilty to felony kidnapping, and then Birch Told tells her that Jan is going to come to Jackson Hole to his family, work at his family fun center, come hell or high water, however she gets there. So what does Marianne do? Does she call the police? Does she tell him fuck off and put, like keep Jan in the house and put locks on the door? No, she puts Jan on a plane and sends her to Jackson Hole. I can't make the stuff up. So her father is livid, but Jan stays in Jackson Hole with Birch Told in his motorhome for 2 weeks during that summer. And her mother flew her there. So now, and then Joe's
I would be so interested to hear from people who worked at the Family Fun Center.
Oh my
God. The thing that they didn't, obviously this was Jan's story. And so they just focused. But remember, pedophiles are not grooming just one family, one child. A lot of times they're involved in multi-layered grooming patterns with lots of different people, and having a family fun center, working as a car salesman, going to church on a regular basis, and being let out on his own recognizance. He probably had access to multiple families.
Oh my God.
So it would be so interesting, I think, to hear, because I'm sure there were other kids working at the family center who are like, okay, there's this girl and she's living with like this 45 or 50-year-old dude, and it's genuinely creepy.
Yeah.
Because the thing is, a 14-year-old girl or a 16-year-old girl, she's not going to censor herself. She's not going to know that like her behavior is genuinely weird.
Well, and also, did he abuse any of the other kids at this family fun center?
Oh, I'm sure he did. I mean, come on. This guy is like creepy. He's like creepy with a capital C, or however you
capital
spell it.
Creep. Creepy with a capital creep. Okay, so Joe, his brother, is on camera saying Birch Told was happier than he'd ever seen him, but he doesn't know why with a little girl. Joe tells Jan she should go home, and puts her on a plane to Salt Lake, and her mother picks her up. Jan was angry and wanted to go back to Berchtold. She says she wants to finish the mission. So this is really hard because she has been brainwashed, and it's not like she's kicking and screaming and trying to stay away from him. She wants to be with him, and her parents are saying, go ahead, let me put you on a plane. So Berchtold would not leave Jan alone, which leads to her, get ready for this, everyone, her second abduction. August 10th, 1976. Jan had only been home for a few weeks, and one morning she is missing, and a note is found from her. She has run away and tells them she will not come back until they let her be with Berchtold. That afternoon, Berchtold calls the Brobergs and tells them Jan called him and told him she had run away from home and that she would not tell him where she was, and he was worried. 2 or 3 agonizing days went by. They waited 2 weeks before they called the FBI agent Pete Welsh. I don't know what it is with these people.
God.
She's abducted for the second time, and they wait 2 weeks before they call good old Pete Welsh from the FBI. They waited because they were too embarrassed for people to find out that Jan had disappeared again.
You know why else they waited? I mean, this is what I clearly saw when I got to this part. She's no longer their little like flower that's like perfect and pristine. She's combative, she's angry, she's not listening to them, and also she's no longer a virgin. She's just this rebellious teenager. So let her go and see what kind of trouble
Oh God.
She's made her own bed now. She has to lie in it. And as crazy
God.
as that sounds, because especially now, there's a reason why statutory rape is for under 18, because you're considered a child until then. And let's face it, I know a lot of kids over 18 who are still children in their brains. But, I read into that, and maybe that's not a popular opinion, but that's mine.
No, I agree. Oh my God. It's just so crazy. So on September 1st, with Jan missing 3 weeks on her second abduction, Berchtold began his jail sentence, and because of his good behavior, he spent only 10 days in jail. He moved to Salt Lake City to live in his motorhome and disappears. So now no one knows where he or Jan are. The FBI taps the Brobergs' phone. Berchtold calls one day and speaks with Marianne, and you can hear all of this, you guys. You can hear their conversations were tapped, so they were recorded. And he tells Marianne that Jan called him and that she's resorted to stealing, prostitution, and selling dope. Berchtold continues to call Marianne for 3 months, saying he doesn't know where Jan is. Berchtold tells Marianne he still wants to marry Jan. There's no one else for him. November 1976, approximately 90 days into Jan's second disappearance, it took the FBI quite a while to search the trailer parks in Salt Lake City, but they finally find Berchtold's motorhome. They put a surveillance unit on the motorhome. 2 or 3 weeks into the surveillance, an agent from Salt Lake City knocks on the door of the motorhome, and Berchtold let him in. He says he has not seen Jan, and strewn all over the motorhome are huge poster-sized pictures of Jan in his motorhome, like a mausoleum, like a worship area. But he says he doesn't know where Jan is. One day, Jan calls home and tells everyone she wants to hear their voice and tells them that she loves them. And when the sister picked up the phone, I can't remember if it was Karen or Susan, and she hears Jan's voice, she just starts to cry. Like, Jan, where are you? It's so sad. And Bob, Jan's father, asks her if Berchtold still wants to marry her, and she replies, I still want to marry him. November 11, 1976.
But don't you find that telling that was the question the dad asked? The dad
what the fuck?
Like, how are you?
How are you? Are you okay?
Are you okay? We miss you so much. We love you. Instead, he said, do you still want to marry that fucking pedophile? And she goes, I want to marry. It's like, ew. Like,
I know.
What is why are you hyper focused on that? Why aren't you hyper focused on the care and concern of your child?
If you've never said what the fuck, this This documentary will have you saying it at every turn. So
Yep.
November 11th, 1976 is the second disappearance. It's day 102, you guys, 102. The surveillance is ongoing in Salt Lake City. Agents observe Berchtold walk across the road to a payphone located at a gas station. They observe him on the phone for about 10 to 12 minutes. And when he leaves the phone booth, he left the phone book open. So agents find a phone number written on the phone book and they trace the number and find out it's to a Catholic girls' school in Pasadena, California. They call the school and the school says they don't have anyone by the name Jan Broberg, but the agents eventually find out that she is there under the alias Janice Tobler. Agents arrest Berchtold the next day for federal probation violation, and he was taken to jail and eventually brought back to Pocatello, Idaho. So this is what happened the second time of her disappearance. And this is Jan speaking. So she says that she had gone out her bedroom window and Berchtold was waiting for her and took her and drove her to California. He enrolled her into an all-girls Catholic school. He told the nuns she was his daughter and that he was a CIA agent and they had escaped from Lebanon. This was during the Lebanon crisis. He tells them that Jan's...
I bet that school was like so embarrassed. Like,
I
hi,
bet.
we're accepting kidnapped students now.
Yeah. A CIA agent.
Right.
Yeah. So he tells them that Jan's mother had been killed and that he would appreciate them taking care of her because he still had to go to his CIA work and that he would visit her on the weekends. A Pocatello policeman flew to Pasadena, picked up Jan, and brought her back home. When she arrives home, her mother is standing at the kitchen sink and Jan walks right by her to her room and shuts the door. She becomes a shell of herself and her spirit is gone. January 24, 1977, Jan has been home for 38 days. Bob gets a call from one of his employees screaming that his flower shop is on fire. The shop burns to the ground, and Bob knows that this was Berchtold's doing. He knows that Berchtold hated Bob's position as Jan's father. Berchtold had paid two guys to torch Bob's store. The guys were caught and sent to prison, but they were never able to pin it on Berchtold. Berchtold was acquitted of first-degree kidnapping by reason of mental defect. Berchtold was court-ordered into a mental facility in June of 1977. He was released 6 months later. Berchtold says when he was young, he was put in charge of his sister, blah, blah, blah. He has this whole story about what happened in his family and that he eventually, this is what brought him to this is what brought him to have this need to take care of a little girl. So that's his explanation. June 1978, 18 months after Jan returned home. Jan is still in communication with Berchtold because the mission has not been completed. But they're not communicating as much as before because Jan says he thinks at this point Berchtold is losing interest because she's getting older.
Yep.
She's not even, she's just about to turn 16. She's just about to turn 16. And when she turned 16, she started to question the existence of the aliens. So she's truly believed that she was part alien for all these years. Okay. But now she's starting to question it, but she's afraid to not believe in them. She tells herself if she is not pregnant, she is going to get a gun, tell Susan about the mission. And if Susan doesn't want to do it, she'll kill Susan and then kill herself. But on the morning of her birthday, when she realizes that everyone was fine, she comes to the realization the aliens aren't real. So Jan finally shares her alien story with Karen and then the rest of the family. No one asks her probing questions about why she believes in aliens. They are too afraid to find out exactly what happened with her and Berchtold. Now that right there is some bullshit.
Yep. Yeah. Also, they don't want to know. They don't want to know because you know what would happen if she opened herself up 100% to their scrutiny. They don't want to know because then what would happen is they would also have to open themselves up in order for them to in order for them to like heal from the inside out. They'd have to completely lay themselves bare as well, and that's too difficult. Again, that's why family trauma like this gets repeated generation to generation because of secrecy and lies.
Yeah. Oh my God. So now we're 28 years later. Okay. So Jan is what, 20? It's 28, 16. Help me there. 34. She's in her 30s. Okay. She's at an event
28
in
and 16, she's in her 40s.
28 and 16. Oh, 44. Hey, I said math was not my strength. Listen, I can't do math. I can't read. Oh, well, I did learn how to read last episode of Dividends Simply. All right. Okay. 40. She's in her 40s.
Girl,
Dear
she's
God.
31.
Oh my God. Dear God. Okay. We'll edit that out. All right. So Jan is at an event introducing her mother's book about their experiences with Berchtold titled Stolen Innocence. Jan and her mother had eventually had long talks about what happened, and Marianne started writing. She started writing in the 90s and finished the book in 2003. She and Jan started speaking at different events regarding sexual abuse. Berchtold started trying to show up at different events where they were speaking. He would refute the contents of the book and started threatening them that if they didn't shut down the book, he would make their lives as miserable as possible. I think he already did that. Berchtold then began canvassing Pocatello, distributing a flyer that contained false statements and libelous information that stated Berchtold was given total access to Jan in exchange for sexual favors with her parents. Now, that's not libelous, was it? That's for real. He
Right.
was given total access. So Jan files a stalking injunction. Jan had to go to court because Berchtold contested it. And she was horrified because she felt he was doing this just because he wanted to see her up close. Yuck. Can you imagine? Ugh. She has to speak in court with him there after not seeing him for about 30 years. She is sitting at a table next to his and having to look and speak to him just a few feet away. He is questioning her about the book, asking if there's plans to make a movie, and asking if her goal in all of this is to profit from these things. And she says her goal is to educate the public about predators like him. He says that he wants to publicly apologize for the hurt he has caused. And she says if he wants to apologize, he should stand up, tell the truth, and serve his time in jail. She gets the stalking injunction, but not for the customary 3 years, but for the remainder of his life. Finally, she gets something. On one of her public speaking events, Berchtold shows up and starts a clash with her biker security force. BACA, the acronym BAKA, Bikers Against Child Abuse. BACA members were outside the event when Berchtold showed up, making threats, and he ran over one of the BACA members and drove off, and he had shown up with a gun. Berchtold was arrested and charged with 3 felonies and 2 misdemeanors. He was found guilty. They tell him he has to come back the next week to be sentenced. Refusing to go to prison like the coward that he was, he takes all his heart medication with a Kahlua and milk and dies. When Jan hears Berchtold killed himself, she cried and felt sorry for all the people that his actions had affected. 6 women had come forward to tell Jan that they had been assaulted as little girls by Berchtold. He had actually been found guilty in the case of the rape of one of these girls and had spent 1 year in jail. So at the
Wow.
end of the documentary, Jan is asked by the interviewer if she has forgiven Berchtold. She says forgiveness is a tricky word. She feels that not forgiving him only puts the jail cell around her. She figured out that she can live with her tragedy in a way that tragedy no longer runs her. The way she became to forgive her parents was to help them forgive themselves.
Yeah, I have to say that at the end of the documentary when she talks about, her parents, I kind of wish that she had gone into maybe a little bit more. You could clearly tell she's a very she was a very composed and beautiful and very well-spoken woman, and you could tell that she probably had done a lot of work to get to the place that she
Yes.
is in her
Yeah,
life.
for sure.
And the fact
Hmm.
that she could forgive her parents for their inability to, like, obviously protect her, but it wasn't just protect her, it was like repeatedly they were not able to protect her. And and so the only way somebody gets to that level of forgiveness is by doing a lot of work, because that
Hmm.
doesn't just happen overnight, especially with her parents, because it was like gross negligence, repeated gross negligence. But I will say that I was glad that she came to the place where she was able to say those things about forgiving her parents. But I can tell you that the parents never said that they were able to forgive themselves. And it does make me wonder, in a situation like this and all the other situations that are out there like this, um, it must really like I felt like the whole situation weighed very heavily on the mom's mind, because she said that she could never forgive herself for not protecting her child.
Hmm.
But the father never said that, and I also thought it was so interesting that the mother, out of the mother and father, that the mother was the one who said she could not forgive herself, because remember, the dad only did the upsy downsy handsies. The mom was the one who had the affair, because their story obviously is very, very sad, and they're going to have to live with this, with these memories and these stories for the rest of their lives. But it just made me really sad. I wish the dad would have done more, like, to maybe let us feel like he had forgiven himself, or he had asked her for forgiveness, because, it's like, I don't know, women, I feel like women shouldn't have to carry the weight of this
The
generational
burden.
trauma. Yeah.
Well, and again, it's a film, so it could have been edited out. There could have been a lot of other things he said, so we don't really know, right? But
That is
yeah, and I know I've said this to you like many times, that I can't believe the mother and father would be filmed talking about all this ludicrousy. Is that a word? Um, you know, and admitting to this, the father admitting to helping Birchtold relieve himself. But then I think about, now that we've gone through this whole story step by step and getting your feedback and whatnot, I'm wondering if this was them holding themselves accountable. You know what I mean? Because it takes,
yeah.
I don't know
Yeah,
what the
I wonder
word
if it
is.
was part
It's,
of their healing process.
yeah, to say we're going
It's
to have to,
interesting.
we're gonna look like fools, but we have to do this for our daughter, because man, we weren't there for her. We failed her big time. And if she needs us to come out and do these documentaries and do these events or whatever it may be, and we talk about our crazy behavior, then so be it. It's the least we can do for her. I mean, that's what I'm thinking now. Because before I was just like, why the hell? I mean, it's great that they would be so honest, but what? And I'm thinking it's probably for her,
Yeah.
that they did that.
Yeah, I
Because
mean, I will say that it appeared in the documentary. Again, it's just a documentary, so you don't know what their lives are like after. But the sisters, their just their interaction with the interviewer and the parents, it did lead you to believe that there was a lot of love in this family.
yeah. Well, and that's what Jan says in the very beginning, that the love and security they felt from their parents is what helped them get through this incredible event. Um,
Also, all the time that the mom was running around town bringing him peanut butter and jelly sandwiches at his work, and like, and shining his knob, I want to know who's watching the kids. I mean,
I,
and Gail has 5 children, and her husband is like taking the motorhome to fucking Mexico and traveling all around and like
oh
on the
God.
lam and pretending he's somebody he's not. Who's watching the 5 kids?
The kids. Yeah,
And I'm
right?
thinking
I know.
also, I'm like, what kind of train wreck is happening with his kids? you
Yeah,
know?
exactly. I mean, this could have been a mini series. They could have gone into all of that. Like how were his kids affected? Things like that. And like you said, I actually really am interested in the children's fun house, or what was it? Fun park or children's, what did I say it was? A
It was
park, a fun park,
family fun
family,
center.
let's say whatever. I'm
Well,
sure there's stories from those people. I mean, it would have been, they could
I
have.
just Googled it and it says
Mhm.
sources state, this is, sources
Yeah,
state
yeah.
that Gail Birchtold also remarried a former Marine, James Leslie Wadman, in 1988, but has kept her life a secret. The 5 children named Jerry, James, Joseph, Jeff, and Jill stayed with their mother after the kidnappings, although their father was probably allowed to visit.
Oh gosh. At first I thought you were going to say the children's names were Jerry, Gary.
Mm. A friend
Wow.
of the
Oh my God.
family a friend of the family said that the children changed their names.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You don't want anything to, you want to stay far away from that name. Woo! This was a crazy one, you guys. I'm telling you, there are
Right.
some
And also,
crazy stories out there.
wait, did you know that they are going to make this into did you know that Peacock has a movie on it? It's called A Friend of the Family.
Joy, you got to edit this out or leave it in. Everyone, if you go back to the beginning of this recording, I say that there was a peacock.
And
Oh
did you
my God.
know that
Yes, my answer is yes. I knew.
Ma-
Because I said it
Mary Ann
2 hours
listen,
ago.
Mary Ann Broberg is played by Anna Paquin, and Bob Broberg is
Uh,
played by Colin Hanks, Tom Hanks's son.
yes, I know. It's not new. That documentary came out quite a few years ago, and I said it at the beginning of this episode. Holy cow. Okay. Anyway.
Anyway, guys, even though this even though there was no murder in this case, it was
Oh.
clearly chocked full of crime. And also my memory is a crime.
Your
But
memory.
you know what else is a crime?
What's that, Joy?
That we are out of time.
Yes, your memory is a crime. Thank you for listening, everyone. And don't do what I did. Don't complicate your day.
All creativity, commentary, and opinions in this podcast belong to Cheryl and Joy. Music composed and mixed by Gabe McKeon. Logo and merch created and managed by Kevin Callan. Podcast editing and advertising by Joy McKeon. Legal representation provided by John Bojezek. Please like, subscribe, follow, and listen. You can listen to us on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. And remember, you can find us on Instagram and YouTube, and you can email us at murderandeverythingelse@gmail.com.
Bye, fishes.